The time in Central Africa is 9:31. Lovely good morning to you and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Chatback right here on Radio Christian Voice. Hopefully you rested well. Hopefully you had a great long weekend. And in as far as current affairs is concerned, we are back at it. My name is Angel Kasabo, and you can also follow this conversation live on Facebook. You go to your Facebook and search for RCV News. RCV News is a platform where we post everything current affairs. So come through and let's get interactive. And then the number is 0956 200 490. 0956 200 490. That's the number that you can get in touch with the studio for your contributions and questions. This morning, we look at national matters, and I'm privileged to be joined by Luena Member of Parliament, Honorable Mubita Anakoka. Good morning and welcome to Chatback.
Good morning, Angel, and good morning to RCV listeners. I hope they had a blessed long weekend and everybody went through safely. Those that went to the trade fair, I hope they're back in Lusaka now and they're getting back to their businesses. So we thank God.
Honorable, it's always a pleasure hosting you on RCV and on Chatback, to be precise. But let's start with how is Parliament work going? We've been seeing Parliament has been on fire of late. We know that you are discussing the supplementary budget. So many things that's happened. How is Parliament and how is parliamentary work?
Parliament work is going on well. It has indeed been pretty busy. The amendment bill, constitutional amendment bill issues, supplementary budget, and many other issues that Parliament is currently engaged with. And of course, on top of that, you still have a continuation of some of our colleagues forgetting what they were actually sent to Parliament to do. They forget to represent their voters, the people of Zambia that gave them a mandate to represent them even on the opposition ticket. So they still engage in those unnecessary walkouts, making accusations when they are given an opportunity to speak. They want to just go wild, find a basis to accuse the presiding officer of being biased when everybody can see.
The last time that I had you on this platform, I asked you about, the behavior. Because when we say behavior, it's a little bit of a strong word, but this is something that also members of the public have noticed to say, the behavior of some of our honorables in the House is questionable. And at that particular time, you told me that there's need for us to reevaluate and for members of Parliament to ensure that they, conduct themselves in an honorable way. Ever since we had that conversation, do you think much has changed?
No. If anything, some of them have now made it their primary mission to make sure that their political relevance is anchored on disorderly conduct on the floor of the House. You see, our Zambian Parliament, I don't know whether because people are watching YouTube too much nowadays, so they see the chaos that is happening in other parliaments and they want to import that sometimes into our parliament. Our parliament is a very, very rule-based parliament. In other words, the Constitution gives the mandate to Parliament to regulate its procedures and processes. And the Constitution says you do so through standing orders. And the standing orders is a set of rules, do's and don'ts that are, for now, in a book, this one, which was actually approved by parliamentarians as members of Parliament in 2024. The one that we found when we got into Parliament in 2021 was actually approved 2021 before Parliament was dissolved. So this book is very clear. And if everybody took time to read through it, and this specifically in relation to members of Parliament, there would be no confusion. Because even when you are not happy with a decision of the presiding officer, there is a process outlined in this book that needs to be followed, so that it's not a wild west kind of arrangement where you just stand up and say, I'm representing the people, I want to talk now, allow me to talk now. There just has to be order if you are to effectively carry out the business of the House. So an order paper is issued every day. And one of the first items I'm sure that people have gotten used to now is agent matters without notice. I think it's 3 of them that are allowed. And what constitutes an agent matter without notice is again defined very clearly. But our colleagues who are always actually given an opportunity to speak, because it's presiding officers operate on a first-come, first-served basis.
So what is the response to some people that have done commentary and say, look, at the end of the day, these people that at times look unruly are just speaking for the Zambians. And if people like that are not going to speak for the Zambians, then no one is going to speak for the Zambians. What is your response to some commentaries that say these people are courageous and are speaking for the Zambians?
I can tell them that they are being misled because speaking for Zambians means you should engage with the subjects or the topics or the issues on the floor of the House. But if you want to, when people are talking about, let's dig a drainage here, you want to say, no. Now I want us to talk about building a church. When people say, today now let's call a meeting in order to talk about building a church, you say, no, today I have come here because I want to speak for the youth. Let's talk about their football team. That is going to be confusion. So every gathering, even at village level, will have an agenda. What are the issues we are going to talk about? Then at the end of it, somebody will even say, okay, is there any other issues anyone would like us to address? So you don't just get in there and say, no, you want to talk about this? I've been sent by my village, and my village wants us to talk about this other issue. There has to be orderliness. So let our people not be misled that what is being displayed there is bravery. It's actually failure to represent the people. So you will notice that a person would want to engage in a conversation at a time when that matter had either already been dealt with previous day or previous week, or is yet to come. He wants just to engage on that matter. And after that, many of them actually walk out. You've heard Madam Speaker saying, Honorable so-and-so, please sit down. You just raise this issue and then you want to walk out. So they don't even get to listen to the answers that are being provided by the members of the executive, who are supposedly the people that are raising these issues for their attention. Yeah. So it is really seeking political relevance through this disorderly conduct.
Okay. Yeah. All right. While it was still parliamentary issues, I think let's get to the Constitution Amendment Bill number 7 of 2025, and the President. It was introduced to Parliament, first reading, and then after that, after the President met civil society organizations and also the church, then he gave a direction to the Minister of Justice to defer this particular process. But also after that, the Constitutional Court, the ConCourt, also ruled that this particular bill needed to go back to the people and perhaps come back in a more, according to what I read from the ruling from the Constitutional Court, come back with more
consultations.
More consultation. But last week we saw you raise on a point of order in the National Assembly.
Yes.
Sort of disputing what the ConCourt had ruled. Let's get your point of contention.
What was it all about?
What was it all about? Because in as far as we're concerned, the President said, let's defer this, and also the ConCourt ruled that this particular bill needed to be withdrawn or needed to go back for consultation. So what was the bone of contention?
Yes, my bone of contention, or maybe not really a bone of contention, my point of order specifically was to ask ourselves as Parliament, of course, through Madam Speaker, whether the House was in order to keep quiet in the face of the Constitutional Court ruling, which ruling declared as unconstitutional the process that Parliament was actually engaged in. Now, I find that a little bit troubling, and therefore cannot be left without Parliament pronouncing itself on or giving guidance to itself on a number of fronts. One, what Parliament was engaged in is its constitutional mandate.
Which the ConCourt ruled unconstitutional.
Which the ConCourt was saying is unconstitutional. There are 3 arms of government. The executive, the judiciary, and the legislature. Each one of them with a specific mandates as vested unto them through the Constitution. The power to make laws in this country is vested in the legislature. Even the power to amend the Constitution is equally included in the Constitution. It's not left hanging. Specifically under Article 79, the Constitution outlines what should happen if you are to amend any part of the Constitution, including the voting thresholds that is required. The same Constitution actually spells out that to touch Part 3, which is the Bill of Rights, you need to first of all carry out a referendum. So the Constitution has not left us in the dark on what should be followed or what should be done in order to amend it. It's very clear. Now, Parliament was doing exactly that. In fact, I was privileged to be selected as a member of the Select Committee, which was constituted to scrutinize the same amendment bill. And as a committee, we had already started our sittings, and some witnesses had appeared. In this case, the Minister of Justice had already appeared before that committee. And we engaged with them in a very, very robust way. And that robust engagement was in itself part of the process of wider consultations. A long list of would-be witnesses, we call them witnesses, but stakeholders that were going to come and make submissions to the committee was already drawn, which includes all political parties, civil society organizations, and anybody else that was going to say, I want to come and make a presentation. The committee was going to do everything possible in its powers to actually receive submissions from them. And from that process, the bill was either going to stay the way it was and go back for the second reading or be amended, now taking into account the report that was going to be produced by the committee. That's consultation. That's the process that was being undertaken by Parliament. So I couldn't understand how that process could be unconstitutional. When it's actually following...
Maybe Honorable, from my little knowledge, I'm not a lawyer, but from my little knowledge, I'm thinking... maybe everything was all good until they looked at where this process started from. And I think this is something that the civil society organizations raised, and also the church. They said, yes, we have to touch the Constitution, but we feel that the process, this was according to them, we feel that the process should have started with the people, as opposed to saying these are non-contentious issues, now let's deal with them. I think for me, that's where the issue was. It was more of the other way around, where things were outlined to say these are the non-contentious issues, now deliberate on them, as opposed to people sitting and saying, okay, these are the non-contentious issues, let us now give it to this arm of government for us to proceed in that manner. That's why, from my little knowledge, that's why I felt the Constitutional Court ruled that there should be wider consultation on that front. Let me get your take on that.
Yes. Whilst there is actually a case to be made for that, but we must be very, very distinctly clear. That is not what the Constitution says in terms of amending any part of the Constitution, apart from the referendum. And even a referendum, you will not go and ask the people, what is it that we should take to the referendum? There is a question that you must take to the people so that they give consent on that question. Somebody must frame that question. You don't go into the stadiums and say, okay, now let's meet at Usakile Stadium, let's meet at Maramba Stadium, let's meet at Chipata Stadium, so that we talk about the question that must go to the referendum. No, it's not done like that. The relevant arm of the government, in this case it will generally be the executive, will pose a question that is taken to the people to say yes or no.
That's for a referendum.
That's for a referendum.
So Constitution?
Now, constitutionally, when it comes to, and that's also part of what would be written in the Constitution, if you want to touch Part 3 of the Constitution. On any other aspects, the Constitution outlines what should be followed. Now, why was I saying there is a case to be made for getting the public views before you go very far? Look, the government under the legislature does not operate in a vacuum. They operate, pass laws, all for and on behalf of the people. That means a system of getting what is supposed to be of concern for the public and for their good will always be in place. How far you cast the net to capture these issues will vary depending on the issue. Strictly speaking, every law that you pass requires the public input.
Yeah.
And that's why, from the parliament's perspective, every law that's passed in that house, no matter how small a particular amendment is, there will still have to be a committee set up to look at that amendment and get public input. Every report that you get, a parliamentary report, we'll talk about stakeholders came and made the following submissions. Now, how wide do you go? Go to Kalabo, or just wait for a couple of institutions here in Lusaka to come and make submissions? Will always depend on the issue at hand. Secondly, there are issues that have been canvassed from the public before. When people have gone around and we have had commissions of inquiries to amend the Constitution.
The Constitution, yeah. So
some of these issues have been submitted on each of those occasions. People have made a case for it. But successive governments have looked at the practicalities, the appropriateness of bringing some of those amendments at that particular time, and they have chosen to leave some of them just in the submissions and pick others. All those, therefore, would have been part of what the government of the day would look at and say, okay, before we go back to the public, otherwise they'll go and ask us and say, but you, the government, because remember, the government is not a political party. Government is a unique animal altogether.
You asked for these submissions
it
again.
It doesn't matter who was there.
You're asking.
Yes.
Okay.
So if President Hakainde now went to the people and say, okay, now make submissions, they will say, no. We gave you as the government the following submissions.
But also, Honorable, don't you think that the court was in sync with the civil society organizations and also the church that all used one word, consultation?
Consultation, yes.
Consultation. Don't you think they were in sync and what the constitutional ruled was very much on side? And
we were in sync.
Yeah.
That's why, speaking as a parliamentarian and as having the privilege of being selected to be a member of the select committee, we were still doing those consultations. It's no wonder I raised the point of order to say, how can what we are doing now be declared unconstitutional when we are doing exactly what the court says is what needs to be done, consultations? Because I can tell you, one of the possible outcomes of the committee report would have been, I'm just giving it to say any outcome is possible, would have been to say, withdraw this bill because all the submissions we've received have come up against it. It's a possibility. One of them would have been to say, go and consult widely on this, that, and that. And the executive was going to respond to it and say, okay, given this report that has come, let's now go and do further consultations. So in other words, in my view, it was a bit of a premature decision by the Concord to declare a process that was still unfolding as unconstitutional. And I'm happy that somebody has taken that matter to back to the Constitutional Court, listing various grounds to say, no, this really doesn't make sense. And they has asked the court to actually apply its mind. And by the way, the court itself was not unanimous in that decision. Okay. In other words, not all of the bench did not agree, was not of one position, but the majority carried the day. And as far as I understand, it was actually a very, very slim majority. So in other words, even there, they were split almost half. Now, coming back to the issue of...
Let's now touch the deferment, because it's been deferred and there's no time limit that has been put on this. But other political parties, civil society organizations are saying just completely withdraw that bill. Forget about it. Let's start from one. Let's go back to the people. Let's listen to them. What do they want in this constitution making process? Then we can even pick up these conversations after 2026. What is your comment to that?
Yes. My comment is that, first of all, deferment for any bill that is on the floor of the House already has actually got a time limit. It must come back within 6 months. If it doesn't come back within 6 months, then it's automatically considered withdrawn.
So Bill 7 is coming back after 6 months?
Well, now that's for the executive to look at, because it's the executive through the Minister of Justice that sought leave of the House to defer the bill. So now that has been deferred, I'm sure the executive will come back to us and say what it is that they want to do. But looking at the guidance from the president, which was, let's do wider consultations. Practically, from where I sit, it's possible that it can come back within the 6 months period. And I would
also practically
say,
from where I'm sitting, I think those consultations, I haven't even heard if there's a roadmap for those consultations. So already I'm thinking it's a dead bill.
very, very important. This cry for consultations is for others a very genuine one. For others, it's mere politicking.
Now, why do you say it's mere politicking?
Yeah, why am I saying it's mere politicking? These items or these issues that were proposed in Bill 7 were identified from where we sit as non-contentious issues. And I would dare put them in 3 categories. There is one category of those proposals of the bill that was seeking to give birth to things that are already in the Constitution so that they are implemented. Specifically here, let me talk about Article 45, I think. Article 45 talks about electoral systems must ensure, it doesn't say must try, must ensure that the following happens. What is it that should happen? That there is gender equity. 2, interest groups are represented in parliament, electoral systems. But that's as far as it went, or as far as it is sitting in our Constitution now. When you go to Article 47, that's talking about the electoral system. All issues to do with gender is completely forgotten. All issues to do with interest groups is completely forgotten. So in other words, we put it as a sweetener in the Constitution. But we have never been brave enough to say, let's implement this. Let's think about what systems should we put in place to actually implement this article that's already in the Constitution. And that's what Bill 7 was trying to do. It was therefore an opportunity for us to say, let's discuss. Is what is being proposed in the bill the best way to bring youths and women, or there are other alternatives that can be explored? That was the purpose of the bill. It's not cast in stone. Any bill is not cast in stone until it is assented to by the president. Yeah. So that's one. The other category of issues is...
And perhaps just sorry to cut you short.
No problem.
But I also got some commentary from a disability movement.
Yes.
That said, we like this, but after... it was published in the Gazette. They saw that should be three.
There were 3 reserved
and again,
for disabilities.
the conversations to say, who told you we want 3?
Yes.
There was lack of consultation. 3 is too little. You should have put it at 5 or 10. And then again, it all comes back to, was there really consultation or people just sitting and putting down these numbers?
Beautiful. And I can tell you, everywhere, and I was privileged to be part of some of the consultation meetings that took place. I went to Mongo, I went to the Copper Belt. Every time a person with disability stood up, they expressed support for the start that is moving from 0 to 3. Whether or not 3 was the appropriate number is debatable. Others were saying we should have the same number as 12 that was being allocated to the youths, the same number as 20 that's allocated to the women. That is a debate to be had. It's not a complicated issue. But the point is, this government, through this bill, demonstrated the desire to get started. Others did not even think about one. Okay? Simply because the Constitution says these groups must be represented in Parliament as well. So for us, or for me, it was an opportunity for us to refine the system rather than to kill it. Yeah. When we do so, we are throwing the baby with the bathwater.
Can I have your 2 thoughts on delimitation? That was also that was also considered as a non-contentious issue.
Absolutely.
From some of the critics that have sat down on this particular seat, they've said delimitation is a contentious issue. We can still go around delimitation because delimitation heavily tied to the Constituency Development Fund. They said, look, CDF is not the only way we can bring development to a constituency. And moreover, if that is the tying issue, then why can't we change the law and say CDF, let's say for instance, Luena is going to be given X amount of CDF based on population and size, and we roll it over to the rest of the country. No need for delimitation. What is your opinion on that?
Delimitation is a non-contentious issue. Now, what makes it non-contentious? Because in Article 58 of the Constitution, we ourselves as Zambians have prescribed that delimitation should be done not more than 10 years. Before 10 years is reached, delimitation must happen. And the reasons we prescribe like that in the Constitution is we say actually give factors. Changing population, changing circumstances in terms of the spread of the population, maybe activities. So for quality representation, we put it in the Constitution that it must happen every 10 years. So it's a constitutional requirement. It's not a discretional matter for anyone to decide. And I must indicate here that even our colleagues in the previous regime recognized the challenges in the Constitution. It's no wonder they came up with Bill 10. Okay? Hardly 3 years after they had amended it in 2016, they came back and said, no, there are issues in here. So delimitation is, excuse me, is non-controversial. Now, there are issues people are raising in relation to delimitation, some of them saying that we can do delimitation without touching the Constitution. Unfortunately, that is an impossibility. Why? Because the number of constituencies is specifically stated in the Constitution as 156. So any exercise that will be done by the Electoral Commission of Zambia, who are mandated to carry out delimitation, that results in 3, 4, 5, 8 constituencies would be a nullity.
Yeah.
Okay? Until that 156 is removed. Now, I had a conversation with some colleagues of mine last week who were saying that, well, first of all, let the Electoral Commission of Zambia do the delimitation. Then the Constitution can be amended to comply with the gazette that would be issued by the Electoral Commission of Zambia. And my argument is that
there was also a lot of talk of why it took the Electoral Commission of Zambia too long to announce to the nation which constituencies were earmarked for delimitation. I actually saw that in one of there's a workshop that you had at the National Assembly Parliament.
Yes. Unfortunately, I wasn't there.
I saw that submission, and also people saying yes, the ECZ should let us know right now which constituencies are earmarked for delimitation.
Now that's very interesting, and I've listened to that argument even from colleagues in Parliament. To me, that is missing the point. Because if I'm saying, for me to engage in this discussion about delimitation, I want to know, first of all, whether Luena is included in there or not.
No. You want to know which ones are going to be. I mean, Honorable, how would you support something that you don't know? Yes, there is need for delimitation, but you don't know which constituencies are going to be delimitated.
Absolutely, because what comes first is, do we agree that we should increase the number of constituencies, in this case, by 55? Okay? For the reasons that are outlined that constituencies can be delimited based on. If we agree that the number now increases from 156 to 211 as it was being proposed in Bill 7, then that's when you go to the next question and say, now that we have agreed that there is an extra 55, how will this be spread around? Because the delimitation process...
Okay, so we actually thought that when they say 55, these ones have already been recognized.
No.
So they haven't been recognized.
You can't recognize even a single one. Because the Constitution is locking it at 156.
And that's a difficult process.
So they first...
We thought that first they're supposed to recognize to say this particular constituency is supposed to be delimited. Then you come up with a final number. So they came up with 55, and then now they say, of these 55, which one are we going to delimitate? That's how it.
And these 55 are not specific constituencies. The 55 is just a number to say that for our present purposes. And by the way, the delimitation report that was done actually by the ECZ in 2019, okay, because this exercise was also embarked on by our colleagues. But because Bill 10 fell through, therefore everything came to a standstill. I think they actually identified an extra 94
constituencies
Constituencies.
earmarked for delimitation.
Extra constituencies
All right,
to be created.
Let's quickly just
Yes.
hit the top of the hour. We've got a few ads, and then just after that, we come back with today's conversation. This morning, I'm privileged to be joined by Luena Member of Parliament, Honorable Mubita Anakoka. He's with us to help us look at matters of national interest. And in the second hour of the program, we'll talk a little bit more about the supplementary budget and also just touching base with the Mufumbwe God issue that we had in Northwestern Province. So, top of the hour, just after that, we continue with our conversation. Good morning.
Conveniently and centrally located in Lusaka's business district, close to embassies and government offices, linked to Levy Business Park, only 27 kilometers from the airport. This contemporary style hotel offers business and leisure travelers all the amenities for a comfortable and hassle-free experience. We're located at Levy Moore Park, opposite Central Police Station, thus security secured. 130 en-suite air-conditioned rooms, comfortable and convenient, bright interior and beautiful surroundings, excellent value for money services and facilities offered, free Wi-Fi for all in-house guests, satellite TV offering 15 channels, coffee and tea making facility, electronic safe in every room, outdoor swimming pool, free everyday breakfast served between 6:30 and 9:30, self-service workstation with wireless internet, printer and photocopier. Planning a meeting, a training session or an interview? Choose Stay Easy Lusaka. We have a fully equipped boardroom for up to 15 delegates. You can either have your lunch or dinner at Zoran Cafe or call and request for the order to be brought to your hotel room.
For more details, you can contact +260 211 372 000 up to 50 or +260 967 790 445. Email stayeasylusaka.reservations@southernsun.com.
Our mission is to empower and equip believers for the Great Commission by delivering godly and relevant content that speaks to each member of the family. Radio Christian Voice, your home since '94.
This is to inform you that the views on this program do not necessarily represent the views of Radio Christian Voice.
Welcome to Chatback.
The time in Central Africa is 10:04, and you are listening to Wednesday's edition of Chatback right here on Radio Christian Voice. You can also follow this conversation live on Facebook. You go to your Facebook and search for RCV News. RCV News is a platform where we post everything current affairs. So come through and let's get interactive on that platform. The number is 0956 200 490, 0956 200 490. You can send us your text messages on that number and also your calls a little bit later. But for now, you can send us your text messages, your contributions and questions. This morning, we look at national matters, and my guest is Luena, Member of Parliament, Honorable Mubita Anakoka. He's with us to help us look at this particular topic. All right, Honorable, let's get back to the conversation. And unfortunately, I have to cut you short because we have to look at the supplementary budget.
No problem.
But now that it's been deferred, what is your preferred stance on this? Do you want it to be back within 6 months, or you are also for maybe it should be withdrawn and we start all over again?
I am of the view that the bill must come back. Why am I saying so? Because remember, I was outlining to you my categorization of the proposed amendments. that some of them is to bring effect to things that are already in the Constitution. The other two, maybe I can combine them, is to say they were simply, there are provisions in our current Constitution that are actually dangerous lacunas that should not be left the way they are, such as the article on withdrawals, cancelling elections if a candidate withdraws. It's a very, very dangerous situation, because there is two things there. One, if a presidential candidate withdraws 2 days before elections, you cancel that presidential election. That means the nation must hold another general election, because the presidential election involves every polling station in the country. So people will go and vote for councillors and members of parliament and mayors and council chairpersons, but not for the president. That's one danger. A general election costs billions. It doesn't cost millions, it's billions. Number two, there is no time limit from cancelling to calling fresh nominations. It can be done after 3 years. It can be done after 4 years. It can be done after 1 year. Now, that's dangerous, because then the person who is in power at that point simply continues for as long as they want. It can be done after 5 years, when the other general elections are supposed to be held.
What happens to the constitutional clause that says after fresh nominations, the election should be held within, is it 90 days?
30 days.
30 days.
Yes. But that's after you've called for fresh nominations. But from cancelling to calling fresh nominations, there's no time limit. There's no time limit. That is something I want our listeners to be mindful of. So it's a dangerous clause. That is a lacuna that is sitting in our Constitution at the moment. Then you have the others, such as hearing election petition. It was, as soon as we passed that 14 days, immediately we saw how it played out. Because there was no requirement that the case must be concluded. In other words, determined. So for me, these are just really housekeeping issues that do not require us to have stadium rallies in the stadiums in order to agree as a nation, because we can see the deficiencies. Finally, there are some articles that are simply, for lack of a better term, illogical. Okay? Where you ask yourself, what was the thinking here? And one of those is the issue of the term of office for parliament. The Constitution says it's 5 years. Then it prescribes when this 5 years starts and when it ends. Guess what? When it gives the starting and end point, it's not 5 years. Now, that is just a recipe for unnecessary conflicts. All that was needed is, hey, can we agree whether we make this term 4 years, 9 months or 4 years, 6 months? Okay?
And I also listened to the workshop, and the Minister of Justice had some sort of, she said this is what, because she went on to different provinces, and she said that for this particular clause, the people out there are saying, let's just leave it as it is.
Yes.
They don't want you to say 5 years, no, as it is, it's okay. Those are one of the submissions that she had from
absolutely.
Let me also get some of the submissions, some of your comments. One of the other submission is that when she went to these various points across the country, there were heavy submissions that members of parliament should not join the council because they are too busy, and when it comes to decision making, maybe they feel because of the busy nature of a member of parliament, council meetings, they're not even going to be there. So that was one, that members of parliament should not constitute of the council. Two, for that term, they said let's leave it as it is.
Yes.
Then the other interesting one is that they should also introduce a term limit for members of parliament. She said these are the strong submissions that I received from people out there. Are you of the view that we should introduce term limits for members of parliament?
No, completely not.
For instance, for you, if you serve 2 terms,
this is my first term.
So your
I should be looking at one more term.
Yes, your next term is your last. Are you for the idea?
No, you see, Angel.
But for presidential, we have 2 terms.
Yes, for presidential, we have.
Why can't we also have 2 terms for members of parliament?
I think that would be a dangerous thing to do for a very simple reason that democracy has its own limitations. We have it for presidential because also when you leave that office, you live with a pension. Okay, members of parliament and the rest of the other elected officials do not have that. But that's not even really the primary concern. Because it's a democracy, it means the people should not be deprived of the opportunity to participate by offering themselves for elections. And also, people should not be deprived of the opportunity to elect an individual whose talent they believe will still serve the nation better. By the way,
so why don't
in
we
our
do
current
that also for
in our current constitution, by the way, and I can bet that how that found itself in the constitution, even the people that voted for it might not have known. There is a term limit for council chairpersons and mayors, 2 terms. But it ends there. One of the proposed amendments was, let's remove this 2-term limit because no one has been able to say why it was put there. So you have things in the constitution that have no basis whatsoever, logically or legally.
So for you, you don't want the term limits on the members of parliament because you feel it's a democratic right for, for people to vote for a specific individual based on talent and all those reasons that you've put.
Yes.
But one may argue that, okay, fine. If that's the case, then why don't we also do that for presidential?
Yes, we ourselves decided that for presidential because it's apex. It's not you are providing leadership at a very, very high level. It is not your day-to-day running around. That's the issue. We thought 10 years is enough for you to set the direction.
But don't you think 10 years is enough for a member of parliament?
No, I don't think so.
10 years, Honorable.
Absolutely.
10 years.
Because remember what
10
people...
years is a lot.
One thing that people are forgetting when it comes to talk about how long a member of parliament should serve is that, you see, politics and the choice to go into politics should not be treated as the by the way. Because if it's treated as the by the way, that's why sometimes we find that even the quality of people that come through does not match the aspirations of the voters. Okay? Why? Because if it is treated as, well, you get there, and after that, you find us here. Okay? Then it becomes most serious people would rather continue with the serious things they are doing before becoming members of parliament. But if we treat it as a serious decision as well, in other words, it is actually, I know that there's a debate of whether it's a calling or a career. From where I sit, it is a major career. Somebody must dedicate themselves to in full.
A career of 7.
Career of 7.
7 the people.
Absolutely. So if we make it and say, well, you must only serve for 5 years, I think we are defeating the whole concept of democracy and the sacrifice that goes.
So, Honorable, you would love to be member of parliament for even 20 years or more.
I was speaking for myself.
Yeah.
You want me to let the cat out?
No, you tell me. You want to be member of parliament.
I don't want people to be lining up in my constituency. But all I would say is, from where I sit, I think one should serve sufficiently long enough. But at the same time, you must leave the stage where people are still clapping for you.
Most definitely.
Yes.
All right, let's quickly move on. Very briefly, our parliament, there's been a supplementary budget.
Yes.
That's currently on the floor of the House, right?
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken,
even
33.6 billion kwacha
yes.
that has been put forward. And this particular issue has drawn a lot of debates. One of the debates is that, and I'll allow you to start from the top as to why this supplementary budget has come through. One of the debates is that why as a nation do we continue to go this route? This is 2 years in a row that the UPND has brought this supplementary budget. While there's nothing wrong with bringing a supplementary budget, but we saw what happened last year. Last year there was something big that necessitated that we bring a supplementary budget. But this year, there is nothing that one would say something huge has happened for the UPND to bring a supplementary budget, and now there are conversations of this is poor planning by the UPND. What is your reaction to that?
Thank you very much for that opportunity. Let me restate a very, very important point you've just made, to the effect that there's nothing wrong with bringing a supplementary budget. That's number one. Number two, does a supplementary budget indicate poor planning? Absolutely not. In fact, a supplementary budget represents strict fiscal commitment. What do we mean? A supplementary budget, particularly in our context as the New Dawn government, is an implementation of the strict adherence to spending within approved limits that the government has committed itself to. So the one-time way of doing things as it used to be in the past has truly been left in the past. So there is high respect now for Parliament as the body that appropriates. Previously, our colleagues who were running the affairs of the nation, everybody knows that they went to borrow wantonly all over the place. They even came under Bill 10 and proposed that the constitutional requirement to seek parliamentary approval when you want to borrow should be removed. Because they just wanted whoever travels to Brazil come back and say, oh, na kongora kwa ndarama kuja, watu pasako 20 million. Kind of madness that you can't imagine when it comes to running a nation. This government put in place a Public Debt Management Act, which was passed in 2022, to make sure the government does not borrow a single ngwe without Parliament's approval. The cost at which it is being borrowed must also be approved by the people's representatives. So, coming to the supplementary budget, this is, in fact, in other jurisdictions, it is a standard requirement that middle of the year, the Minister of Finance must come to Parliament. As he or she reports on the performance of the budget, they must present a mid-year budget. In other words, rearrange the budget in order to run the other half of the year with that new budget so that you know exactly where you are. In our case, you respond to a number of issues. In this case, what is it that has necessitated this supplementary budget? It is responding to a number of issues. One, the heavy debt that was left by our colleagues, which many of us, and I'm sure some of our friends, when they start calling in, they always talk about, you are now in charge. Don't talk about the debt that was left by the PF. Unfortunately, you can't run away from
Others
it.
will even add 4 years.
Yes,
we're going to 5
even
years.
10 years, because the date that they were
Even
signing
10
up
years,
to,
you're still going to be
this
referring
date
to the
they were
patriotic
signing
funds.
up for, they defaulted in 2020. So as long as we are sitting with this date, we have to talk about it. Now, the one in particular that I want to talk about is the date that relates to fuel arrears. That date of fuel arrears, Angels, was signed or arranged in such a way that the more you try to clear it, the higher it becomes. What am I saying? Very onerous clauses were included in some of these supply contracts. Huge penalties being charged to the government. So one of the issues the government is responding to through this supplementary budget is to replace that expensive debt arrears with cheaper debt instruments by going to borrow, maybe issue government bonds or borrow from the commercial banks so that you are not incurring huge interest on the fuel arrears that were left by our colleagues. Now, how did these arrears come about? It's important that we always mention this. Our colleagues, for political expedience, were buying fuel at a higher price and selling it at a lower price in order to wink the masses that they are supplying cheaper fuel. So you hear them challenging us. When we left, the fuel was costing 17 kwacha, 16 kwacha. You people, it reached as high as 34 kwacha. There was no 17 kwacha. The other component of that price, of the price of fuel, was being left unpaid. That's the debt we accumulated. So it's one of the things the minister is dealing with here through the supplementary budget. The other issue that is being dealt with, again, it's in reference to what was left by our colleagues. They started a project to construct a program to construct secondary schools around the country. In my own constituency, they started the project in 2012, then abandoned it, never completed it, and the picture is the same all over the country. Now, we have a serious challenge with our children progressing into secondary school, having secondary school opportunities in my constituency.
Do you think that's a bad thing that they did? At least they started.
What was bad?
Like you said, government is a system, it's not a political
absolutely.
party. One government can start, the other can finish.
One thing that is also very clear in government planning and financial regulations is that do not start an unfunded project. It is extremely reckless to have a budget. You need 4 million to build a school. You organize 500,000. You go and sign a contract for 4 million with the contractor, and they say no, a person can fund for 500,000 by end of Chito. Because what that does is that once the 500,000 is exhausted, you start now incurring penalties. The contractor that has mobilized, and that's exactly what happened even with the contractor that was building the secondary school in Limulunga. The government had to spend so many years now, this new government, negotiating with those contractors. Some of them are accepting to go into gentlemen's agreements, forget about these interests that we are charging. Others are sticking to their guns. So the government has to find money to complete those projects. Otherwise, the money that has already been spent on those projects will go to waste completely. Some of them were beginning to get vandalized. So that's the other issue. The other issue that's being addressed through this is putting everybody FISIP IVACHA 100%. Why is that important? The issue of food security is something that was so topical not too long ago. And this year we are all celebrating because we have, after changing the management of FISIP by putting more farmers on IVACHAs, and this year the decision is to put 100% everybody on IVACHA, is so that we celebrate even a much bigger bumper harvest come the next farming season. All this is to look at issues that are so key for the nation. The other one, the issue of geological mapping. We were talking about the Mufumbwe issues.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I can even link the two.
Yeah.
The mapping exercise is an extremely important exercise, so that we do not handle our mineral resources from bar talk or street talk or talk in the buses and markets. Let's handle the management of those resources from a scientifically informed point of view, so that you have a plan of exploitation. The reason we're having these things popping up so randomly is because clearly there's evidence of we're a very mineral-rich country. But because of not having a systematic system of exploring these minerals, we are having them being discovered randomly. And the random discoveries result into random exploitation. So the exploitation is running ahead of the system. The system is reacting to this exploitation, and then you end up with some of these unfortunate situations, like it's happening.
I know you're not the Minister of Mines, but let me just throw in a question there.
Yes.
Once this geological mapping survey is done, I don't know how many years it's going to take. Did I hear 2 years?
It's been going on for a while.
Not
Yes.
2 years, not 2 years. 2 years, I think, is too much.
I can't remember the period.
But regardless,
Yes.
once this mapping is done, there's been cause that the results of this mapping should be made to the public.
Yes.
Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it's a good idea.
Everyone should know that in Luena, at a certain place, there are gold deposits.
That's a very good idea. I think it's a very good idea. Why? Because once this is done, in fact, there is no way of doing it other than making it public. Because it is based on this information that this time around, when you and I want to go into mining, we are able now to say we are targeting Western Province, the following districts, because we know of the following minerals that are available there. So even when we go to seek financial resources, we go to an institution, we are going with our mining license that we have been granted by the Ministry of Mines. We know what we are talking about. Currently, the way the system has been working, or at least in the past, the way it was working, was that you are going to seek a license to go and first of all look around a particular area. If you discover nothing, tough luck. If you discover something, then you can make plans. Good for you. Okay, but that hasn't worked very well because we have had, minor discoveries. A bit of mining is taking place in the name of they are exploring. So no one is really sure what's going on. And accusations have been made time and again to say these so-called explorations are actually now doing actual mining and denying the locals the benefit of the resource that is being extracted from their localities. Now, that will be a thing of the past when this information is all sitting with the government. Because no one will go there on an undefined basis. You go there strictly to go and mine, because already the content, quality, and the quantity will significantly be known.
Yes, this is from my observation, Honorable, and I stand to be corrected. But some of the reasons as to why we're having this supplementary budget, I've looked at the reasons. There's fewer arrears. There's a social, aspect of it. We have to include people on FISIP. There's also this geological cash for work. I'm looking at the time that the minister presented the 2025 national budget last year.
Yes.
And I'm asking myself, these to me look like they're not unforeseen circumstances. These are things that can be planned.
Good.
So again, I ask myself, why are we bringing this supplementary budget? Why weren't these issues planned for last year?
That's very interesting. Indeed, not being the Minister of Finance, I will offer my understanding of just ordinary budgeting. Even corporate budgets, you can actually plan to bring a supplementary budget. So it's part of your plan as you are planning your activities, because you know what you want to carry out in the first half of the year, and you know things that will only become necessary to be carried out in the last quarter of the year. So you actually plan that, okay, so for the first 9 months, we will use our cash resources in this manner, including making investments in order for us to generate some interest. We will realize this in the second half of the year. And so we will get to our board and the request for this money to be applied for this other purpose. So it's part of your activities that you would have planned in advance. I'll give just one example. We know we're having elections next year. Okay? Now, certain activities in relation to having elections next year are supposed to be done this year. Not everything. And when this year, some of them early in the year, some of them middle of the year. For example, in our case, we know that beginning of the year, a huge part of the country is normally not accessible because that's the heavy rain season. A huge part of the country would be flooded. So you know that this will only happen, for example, in August, up to maybe September or October for 3 months. So there's nothing wrong with you planning to say, so we will make resources available for this particular activity this time of the year. So it's perfectly normal. Not that they were unforeseen, but it's part of cash management, treasury management, okay, to bring certain things into effect at specific times of the year. So that's one of the purposes the option of bringing a supplementary budget would serve. So nothing to do with poor planning. It's actually a demonstration of, one, proper planning, because when the need comes for you to respond to certain
Proper
exigencies.
planning, then supplementary budget.
Yes, because supplementary budget is, as you can see, it's going through the processes of Parliament. Even the little that needs to be, I could not call it the little, even the borrowing that needs to be done is also brought to Parliament as an amendment of the annual borrowing plan.
I wish we had a lot of time to talk about this, but also on the borrowing. If I have my stats right, but I think there's a figure of... is it 10 billion kwacha that has to be borrowed from commercial banks?
Actually, 10 billion from commercial banks. Now that you're saying commercial banks.
And there's been
4 billion from government bonds.
Yes, and there's been an issue with the commercial...
through government bonds.
Through government bonds.
Yes.
But there's been an issue with the borrowing rate that we saw. It's been pegged at 13%. Now, others argue that this 13% is more than the percentage rate at which we got the euro bonds for. They argue that the euro bonds were between 6 to 8%, and now they're asking why is government going this route? Because we are just repeating history. I know you're not the Minister of Finance.
Yes. But we will answer that.
But from the little information that you have, why do you think we decided to go for these commercial banks?
First of all, there is no comparison between the cost of borrowing, this 10 billion, and the Eurobonds. Eurobonds, we were borrowing foreign currency. And the rates on foreign currency were supposed to be far much lower, no more than 2%. If it's very high, 3%. Otherwise, it does range between 1%, 1.5%. You know, that's where it should have been. So going to borrow at 6, 7, 8% Eurobond was suicide. And it's for that reason that, apart from the fact that we didn't utilize the money properly, the cost of borrowing itself made it even more difficult for us to service that debt. And we defaulted as a nation. So there's no comparison.
Then the 13% from commercial
This is kwacha borrowing. This is kwacha borrowing. Yes. And let me take
but
also...
still, even if it's kwacha borrowing, Honorable,
Yes.
13%.
Well, you will know that the current borrowing, if you go to the bank, is actually higher than 13% if you go to the banks to borrow money today. So the government is actually leveraging borrowing at 13%. Yes. But let me say something that was a source of confusion last week in Parliament. One of our, in fact, yes, I'm happy you remember. Our colleagues on the opposition benches decided to understand arrangement fees as commissions. One of our colleagues even misguided himself so much as to suggest that this is a commission
Honorable
that
Member
goes...
of Parliament for Nkana.
Yes, my young brother Binu Mpundu misguided himself so much as to even go as far as suggesting that this commission is the money that Minister of Finance pockets as part of arranging these loans, which is complete lack of understanding of what arrangement fees are. When you go to the bank to borrow money, you want to borrow 100 kwacha, they will put some money in your account, which will not be 100 kwacha exactly. They will deduct a 2 kwacha, they will deduct a 3 kwacha, which they call administration fee or arrangement fee. So that money does not even get dispersed to anybody. It is deducted at source. So if the government is going to borrow and say, okay, can you syndicate some 1 billion for us, that 1% will be deducted there and then. So it's impossible, even if anyone wanted to steal. I don't know why our colleagues believe it's possible for anyone to steal that money. I don't know what arrangements they were doing when they were borrowing the Eurobonds. Okay? If they were able to actually access the arrangement fees, we would like to hear from them how they were accessing it. But the way this government is doing things and the way we know the financial sector operates, arrangement fees is not disbursable funds to anybody under any circumstances. So it was serious misguidedness that the people who are our employers as members of parliament must take judicial notice of. Because if you are going to send an individual to parliament and they do zero research before they stand up to speak on your behalf, they are doing you great disservice. The least that you would expect them to do is to ask questions. What is this arrangement fee about? The minister would have answered. If they are not satisfied based on the answer that's given, then they would seek the clarity that is needed. That way they would be representing you. But to make accusations based on something you don't completely understand, and then when you are corrected, you go outside to hold a press conference. Of course, in the process, you misbehave and you get suspended from parliament for 7 days, as my brother Binu Mpundu has been suspended. The people of Nkana now do not have their voice in parliament, all because of the disorderly conduct of their member, who was only focused on making the scurrilous allegations, not necessarily representing the people of Nkana. He is seeking political relevance by accusing people of corruption. Okay? When he has got no iota, remember the other friend, his friend said, I have got bank statements. And when the matter went to court, today, unfortunately, my brother is in prison for making unnecessary allegations. So there's no need for us to be grandstanding when you have no information at all, when you've been given a very, very important responsibility by the people to represent them. Let's represent them in truth and in fairness.
All right.
Yeah.
Before we bring in calls, let me just quickly also get your reaction to the Mufumbwe gold rush that happened in Northwestern Province. And there were reports that quite a number of people had died, but through the minister, he said only 2 people had died after a confrontation between the police and the informal miners.
Yes.
But also we've seen this is the same case that happened, I think, in Mpika also. Then even previously, Kansenseli, a little bit of similarity.
Absolutely.
But also seeing that we're in this particular situation, and I've had a chance to talk to a few youths in Mufumbwe to say, look, what's the side of the story and why are you doing this? They explain, and then I say, okay, fine. Haven't you heard of formalizing what you are doing? And the response that I got is that particular process is tedious just for us to be formalized, and that's why we opt to going for this particular route. We don't want to be at loggerheads with anyone. We simply want to benefit from the national cake, the so-called national cake that people in Lusaka talk about. Even us people in Mufumbwe want to be part of that national cake. If it was in a situation or that situation happened in Luena, there's a gold rush in Luena, how best do you think it should be sorted, drawing a thin line between the people benefiting but also government benefiting through taxes, through formalization of such mining activities?
Very simple answer to that question. First of all, before giving that answer, let me indicate that it's indeed regrettable when any life is lost. And from the government's perspective, it doesn't matter whether it's 1 or 2. Of course, the ministry clarified because of the sensationalization nature of the way the reports were being spread around, trying to send panic through the nation. So the government had to correct what the numbers are, not because it's acceptable. Coming to your question, it is extremely important that as a nation, we always work through our systems. Where they are tedious and a little bit bureaucratic, that should be brought to the fore so that the bureaucracies can be eliminated, can be attended to, so that there is a bit more efficiency in the way things are done. Lawlessness should never be an option. Why? Because lawlessness will not benefit even the very locals that some people are imagining would be the beneficiaries. Already, if you read just public reports, you hear of some foreigners that have been nabbed who are participating in the same activity, gold rush. Okay, so it tells you that if it's already attracting foreigners, if it was left to be free for all, it means a lot more people, the people of Mfumbwe, eventually will find themselves being sidelined because there would be more people also coming from Lusaka, coming from all over the place. What will that happen? The conflicts that you are seeing between the youths and the police, first of all, in fact, these were already happening, as I understand. Conflicts between different groups, that are engaging in the illegal mining. So it is very important that benefits for the communities are processed in a structured manner, because the community benefits from the taxes that will be collected from the minerals that are mined from there. The community will benefit from employment opportunities. The community will benefit from business opportunities, but only if these are done in a structured manner. So I think Whilst the case for delays in formalizing these processes can be made, what constitutes delays, I wouldn't be privy whether it is 2 months that they can wait or 3 months, I do not know. But those are the issues that they should bring to the fore through their local leadership. There is various channels that they can utilize. I think this government has demonstrated that it's willing to listen. But the option, Angels, that we should never allow to take root is free-for-all lawlessness, because it will not save anybody, even the locals themselves.
Honorable, they could be listening to you right now and they're saying, yes, we love your idea. But the moment that we say we come to Lusaka, we get these mining licenses because we want to formalize, by the time we'll be getting back to Mufumbwe, we would have already found somebody else has got this mining license and covered the parameters of this particular mine. And not only that, but also you find that this is perhaps a foreign investor, and then our work is cut out.
Yes. In fact, to complement your point, I was on another media platform the day before yesterday, and a call came through from Mumbwa, where this individual was narrating exactly what you are narrating. They were advised to formalize the process, form cooperatives, get licenses. They did that. When they went back, they found someone saying, no, not here. This is my area. I've bought this whole, I've bought this whole land. And they were asking, can we be helped? Now, those are, for me, genuine issues to bring to the authorities. Okay, to just make sure they get to the bottom of it. So if there is criminality on the part of anybody, because there's a reason why that area remained so murky, the small-scale mining sector. There's a reason. There are people that have been benefiting from that confusion. You know, there are people that understand that in order for their motives or ill motives to be satisfied, they actually need the confusion to continue. Now, when the government wants to bring law and order in that sector, inevitably there will be some bit of resistance. So, but all those instances of people being shortchanged through unscrupulous people conniving sometimes with local traditional leadership, you find from nowhere this guy has bought half the forest and that's where some of the minerals sites are located. Those are things that can be dealt with once they are brought to the fore. And
as a government, do you think you're dealing with those issues
absolutely
in a diligent manner?
I should
because
think so.
Others are saying we don't trust the government. Yes, they may tell us to come to Lusaka to get these licenses, but the moment we get back, it's a different issue.
The last time I checked,
there's this lack of trust.
I don't think it's lack of trust. I think there is impatience, and to which one can only appeal that let's be patient. I know that the Minister of Mines and the ministry in general have really been working very hard to clear the cadastre area, department, and make sure that people, our locals, benefit from their God-given resources. Now, whether or not that is satisfying everybody that is interested is another issue. Clearly, the Mufumbwe case is telling us that we need to run a little bit faster.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, Honorable, let's quickly get about 5 calls before we call it wraps. Sure. Hello, good morning. You are through to the program. Hello, good morning.
Hello. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well. Your name and where are you calling us from?
This is the Wom Sanje calling you from Kanyama Central, Zambia.
Yes, Wom Sanje, go ahead with the contribution.
Good morning, Honorable.
Good morning, Wom Sanje. Mabuka badala.
Twabuka umuleni mabuka muti.
Twabuka kabotu.
Honorable, you are speaking so well. It's so nice to listen from our program. Tikambeko ya kumaini huku kwa mene huku. Imfa ya mene yaluziwa Honorable siguliwa na God ili onse God yametatenga kusinda kule umoyo wa muntu. Ulijo tukuti condolences. Koma Honorable unkala ndife bantu tunalengetwa mo pambana na nyama vili bose na chilenge chili chose pa ziko pana. munzi chigalizo chake anapasiwa malamulo. That's why ziko iliyonse lina malamulo yake, nyumba iliyonse lina malamulo yake. Hivi ni kumupingo pale tu kamba kuti kulivoera balide machimo balina malamulo. So pano government singa lole sinesiochi kade mwauka mwende mukumbaole land the way it has happened kumfungu kucha ijalandi mwani wiki ya kumbiwa so watimo mwaleka kutitie ni chabe chikali vamene mfuna kuchita ziko izansa rapati moreover mwenda kuma mines yuko na mafuti titimvera vamene vichitika mu surrounding makantri ya surrounding asi vamene vichitika ndiye mamene timvera kuti maboko haramu chifukwa cha minerals yamene yachi. No. Government has to take a punitive decisive decision not to allow anybody until the conditions, because it's too full of many kumumba so apatika mba watatu kapana ni wali fo kumumba ile gold mine ili kumumba ni vitumbi kapana kamba ni mwa hapa ntuti bataraka bagafa abantu mubura bazita makampeni kuteta 10 seconds ikula mwana wa mtu.
Okay.
Ikula mwana wa mtu. So government let it because ya mines siya kumfubwe chape nyama zambienzi bali kushangombo bali kukalabo bali kumukuputu bali kunokwaka nyama kuna chitekera kuti ndiye maminozi amene anga tuvalike amene anga tukulile mankwala.
Right.
You secure them nice.
Thank you so much from Sanja for your contribution. We'll have to let you go. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello, good morning. You are through to the program.
Hello.
Yes, your name and where you calling us from?
Yeah, Bruno Vanje onjine ba Evans nitumina kwacha zanga.
Yes, ba Evans.
Yes, please. Na ba MP na kuposhani konti.
Mauka ba Evans.
Bruno Mauka bwanji.
Tauka.
Yeo. Nikalipo pitiliza banje nitempa kuti mukati paseko time ikulu yakutiseba kola zitu makairo nani time ichepa bantu 5 chabe kai bantu anabofunza ni bambiri maningi bamankala interested in my programs aya bongo mimi nabula ba impe afuna kwafunza ko mafunzo please ukaike ko time ikulu yakutizifunza.
All right, ba Evans, so noted.
Yes, please. Then kubera kuri ba MP ba MP bamene mukamba kutatia hii bakufunzani ma questions a supplementary budget, but when you are coming to power mla promise kuti you are not going to borrow anything maona semza ka borrowing, but look, even the supplementary budget now you are borrowing maona and you are condemning PF that no not default it was just because of corona maona. And they have said that Congole matter was not exceed, but you are saying that you are paying in Congole, but here is not it does not exceed Pamela Munai pesos, Nakulirako, Napakirako, Maona. So it's a natural still mush. No, we have bought to borrowing because of the citizenship, but many by PF but a lot has been done by PF through that borrowing. We have seen that and people can seek and testify, my lord, my child. So much could have many to no child to salira, to many mukamba. Whereby mukamba constituency and we are here constituency because you are failing to point other constituencies because you are aware that bazakushushani bantu now to your constituency one so kushushani because you are still on a bichikinga maona. So to be honest, ukama chirunga moni chintu cha bwino wa MP. So borrowing is not a good idea. So for you, as you have come with the trajectory of borrowing, which means you have failed also. Mamene mukampisha PS when I'm failing and I know you have failed. Which I mean, but our agreement was that you will not borrow, but you will try the resources which are there in the country. But unfortunately, you are also borrowing. So why can you condemn others?
All right, thank you so much, Ivas. Thank you so much. Great to know that you're tuned in. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Your name and where are you calling us from?
Angel, this is Mr. Jerry.
Your name again?
Mr. Jerry.
Mr. Jerry, where are you calling us from?
Just within Lusaka.
Go ahead with the contribution, sir.
I just want to go back to what you asked the Honorable Minister.
Honorable MP, I received the promotion, Mr. Jerry.
As the honorable MP is not a minister.
I received the promotion, though.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
I was just concerned with the terminology when you said it's not fair for the MPs to be given a stipulated time, say maybe 10 years like president. So maybe then they could go even a bit longer. On that one, on my side, I think even the MPs, for them to work well, 10 years would be better for them.
Okay.
Because if an MP is given 10 years, he cannot deliver in 10 years. I mean, what is he going to do in 20 years?
Good question.
So 10 years is just a lot of time for somebody to do something if he's an MP.
Okay.
You can't deliver in 10 years. If we give you 20 years, it will be worse.
All right, thank you so much.
All right.
Mr. Jerry. Thank you so much. Let me squeeze in a text message here.
Sure.
And perhaps get one more caller. I know I've been advised. It says, good morning, Angel. Look, when an opposition MP is on the floor of the House, you, the ruling MPs, try by all means to distract them from bringing out valid points. Secondly, let's learn to respect the constitutional courts. They were clear that the bill and the way the process was done was unconstitutional. We sent you people to Parliament to represent us, not to foster your political ambitions. Lastly, if you people really care about us, deal with the real challenges, which are electricity and fuel. Right now, there is a shortage of fuel here in Kitwe, and also stop weaponizing the Constitution in the name of amendments. Raymond Kitwe. Thank you so much, Raymond, for your text message. Let's get the last caller. Hello, good morning. You are through to the program.
Good morning, Mr. Angel.
Your name and where are you calling us from?
Richard, calling in Mikango area.
Mikango area.
Mauka Richard.
MP.
Ziko
MP. You are saying that the Parliament understand our supplementary budget. Supplementary budget first question. And then you say the other thing about Bini Ompun. Bini Ompun is a good presenter in Parliament, but don't you think that there is too much provocation on Nankane, in Parliament?
Okay.
In Parliament, there's too much provocation. So don't you think that way forward, we should know how to speak also the ruling party? And the speaker also, is too arrogant also. I don't know what will happen in future if the speaker, ladies speakers are doing like that. You see? So, in UPNG, another those people are not illegal miners. Those are explorers. Some guys in the discover, no, Mr. Richard Kani was the one who found this gold in this Mufumbo. But forgetting your own people in Zambia here. And then
okay. But Richard, we'll have to let you go because we've run out of time. But thank you so much for your contribution. Right. Thank you so much. Honorable, I would have loved to get as many calls as we can, but we started the program a little bit late.
Yes.
So maybe that's why they delay. But you only have about 4 minutes to respond to all these.
Absolutely.
Before we wrap up. We have to wrap up.
Yes. So that I can rush to my committee.
Yes, please.
Let me start from the bottom. Richard Kumikango. He is asking where is the money from the supplementary budget going. This money by Richard, part of it is going into putting everybody on e-voucher FISIP, number one. Number two, this money yenda kusiriza ma projects yena ngo yakuti Boma has been losing money because of contractors having mobilized, stuck on site, but nothing is happening, and they are charging interest on these stored projects. This money is also going into making sure that a cash for work program will still continue in order to take care of our vulnerable people. But lastly, and not the least, because it's just among others, this money is going to pay some of the Nkongole that was left by our colleagues when they borrowed wantonly without any plan on how to pay back, specifically Nkongole on fuel supplies. Not to mention that some of it is also going to pay local suppliers. There's a lot of local suppliers that are owed money, again, because there was procurement way outside the procurement rules. Without any funding, people were being awarded contracts left, right, and center, and the government is owing everybody all over the place. These things have been are now being taken care of. So ndiye kuyanka kwa funzo yanu yoba Richard. But the one you asked isn't, are people provoking binu mpundu. But Richard, in parliament kuli rules, everyone gets provoked. When I stand to speak, I get heckled by the people from the opposition. It is up to you as a leader not to allow yourself to be provoked. Get emotional. Don't let people get under your skin. In fact, the standing orders do not allow members of parliament, a member of parliament who is on the floor talking, to talk directly to other members of parliament. You should talk only to the presiding officer, because that's the one through who you are addressing the house. That's the one through who you are addressing the nation. So you are supposed to close your ears to all the statements that are being said. There are a lot of them that get said in parliament whenever anyone is speaking. That happens. Even when the vice president is speaking, people talk. You've never seen her getting angry. They pass comments there. You don't hear them. But we hear them there. We are there in the house. So Benio just has to learn to control himself if he wants to be a leader. Currently, he's failing to do that. And we don't want to make him a topic. Ruling MPs disrupt, I think that's the same issue we've already dealt with. But Jerry Murosaka, let me deal with that question last. So I hope, my brother, you can just continue listening.
You have 1 minute.
Evans. Supplementary budget, I think we have already dealt with this supplementary budget. We said it is not a reflection of failure to plan. It is, in fact, part of the fiscal discipline that this government has adopted. Bomunsanje Kwakanyama, thank you very much. I think it's just to thank him for the fact that he's emphasizing that for the people of Mfumbo to benefit from these minerals, there has to be a structured, sustainable, safe way of mining rather than a free-for-all kind of arrangement that can lead to loss of life. He's even given an example of Kumumboko, where, again, an accident has occurred. So, in conclusion, my brother Jerry, 10 years for an MP. Let me answer this one on a light note and say, you see, as MPs, we are not allowed to discuss ourselves. The standing orders prohibit us from discussing ourselves, my brother, Mr. Jerry. Thank you very much.
Honorable, thank you so much for coming through to today's edition of Chatback. We know we got you out of parliament, but you have to rush back. But thank you so much for your efforts. Thank you so much.